Welcome to Champagne Problems. We are your hosts, Robbie Shaw and Patrick Balsley. Thank you for joining us on this journey as we explore our mental health, well-being, performance, and longevity, and how our relationships with alcohol can influence each. No shame, no labeling, no judgment, just curiosity. Welcome back, all of you sweet souls. Today we're speaking with Jerry Schwab. Jerry is the president and CEO of the historical High Watch Recovery Center in Kent, Connecticut, and is chairman and founder of the highly successful Global Exchange Conference that brings together leaders from around the world looking to elevate their knowledge regarding the latest mental health, addiction, and wellness innovations. Patrick and I attended the Global Exchange Conference last year, and it was mind-blowing how brilliant of an experience it was, and we got to watch him interview Rob Lowe and Whoopi Goldberg. Jerry's kind of a celebrity for us. Let's talk to Jerry. Jerry Schwab, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Thank you for having me.
You got it, man. The pleasure's all ours. We're honored you made time for us, and we're excited to learn more about all you've got going on. We know a little bit just because we follow you, but we're excited to hear from you. We typically start with some rapid fire questions, somewhat playful, but
some of them are weird as shit.
Some of them are a little
and Robbie
odd.
created them, so don't judge me.
What was your first live music concert and where?
Oh, this is embarrassing.
Ooh, better.
New Kids on the Block.
Yes.
No way.
Yep.
No way.
How did you know?
Knew it.
That was very good.
We're about the same. What are you? How old are you?
43.
Yeah, I'm 41. That was not mine. Was Hootie and the Blowfish, but it was right around that.
New Kids on the Block.
My sister was into New Kids on the Block at the time, big time, and my grandparents decided that they were going to take her, and took me with them. And I'll never forget my it's kind of my step grandmother, but she was thrilled with herself. She got me this long, almost nightgown length pink T-shirt with multicolored little drawings on it with round mirrors.
You got any pictures? Put them up on the High Watch website.
That was burned long ago with my intake. Those
That's hilarious.
Nice.
Pink
It was bad.
nightgown
I'm
length.
still traumatized by it.
Understandably.
All right, next question. Who is the most famous person that you have a relationship with that you're comfortable sharing?
Russell Brand and I are pretty friendly.
Hey!
Yeah, I know. We've seen that.
That's a good
Pretty
one.
Cool.
Jeez.
He's a good friend of ours and solid dude.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One of the smartest people I've ever met in person. People don't know that.
If someone were to warn us about you, what might they say?
He's a lot.
He's a lot.
There we go.
Intense. A lot.
Perfect.
All right, this is the easiest. This is an easy one. If you could know, and I'd say that every time we fucking ask it. If you could know the answer to anything or any question, what would you ask?
What happens after you die?
Yeah. Standard.
Yeah.
Standard.
All right, this is Robbie's favorite question. I have nothing to do with this.
Jerry Schwab, what's your favorite smell?
What's my favorite smell? The lobby at the Beach Club Resort at Disney World.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say this pen, this
That is
scratch
great.
and sniff marker right here.
Bic pen are my
Fresh Bic.
favorite smell.
Lobby. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Because, Patrick makes fun of that question. I think it's a nostalgia thing. When I think of my favorite smell, it's I got it. I know it.
I was just thinking about it, dude. It's probably weed. I like the smell.
Weed.
I really like the smell of weed. I still do. Yeah.
Dirty socks. Okay, let's dive in. Jerry, what was early life like for you? I understand that there's some lead up to, you said.
I mean, I have a couch behind me. I could lay down and we could really get, I mean, how much, we have what, 4 hours?
No, more like, where did you grow up? Where'd you go to school?
Grew up in Connecticut my whole life. Went to school in Connecticut. So I'm a Connecticut born and raised person, still live here. I live in Woodbury, Connecticut now, which is about 20 minutes from the town I grew up in.
Gotcha. What town did you grow up in?
Oxford, Connecticut.
Okay. Good deal. What led you to working in the field of addiction?
I drank a lot and used a lot of drugs initially, which got me into treatment. In 2010, I came to High Watch. I'm an alumni.
Nice.
After that, I went back to my regular career, which I worked in the ambulance industry. We ran a couple of nonprofit ambulance companies, did a medical billing company, at a security company. Didn't intend to work in behavioral health at all. And then fast forward a bit to 2016. I always had a relationship with High Watch because being an alumni here and some of my friends stayed on and worked here. I came in to help them with some project stuff because they were going through some transitional changes and some pivotal points in the organization's history they were approaching. And I ended up, working here, being offered a job and working here as a vice president, and then about a year later as the CEO. But I didn't intend to. Kind of happened accidentally.
Pretty cool, man. Give us a backstory on High Watch.
So High Watch is the world's oldest 12-step based treatment program. It was founded by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. So the big book, the AA text, was published in the spring of 1939. High Watch was founded in the fall of 1939. So by a woman by the name of Marty Mann. If you're not familiar with her, she was one of the first women to maintain long-term sobriety in AA, was a sponsee of Bill Wilson's. She started going to Bill and Lois's house in the summer of 1939. She was in a psychiatric institute in Greenwich, Connecticut, and they would bring her to his house for a meeting once a week. He became her sponsor. She had a sponsee ultimately a couple months later, a woman by the name of Nona Wyman, who was used to come to this place in northwestern Connecticut called High Watch Farms. And back then it was a spiritual retreat. So High Watch is 84 years old as a rehab and over 100 years old as a spiritual retreat center where people would go suffering from anything, really. Homelessness, mental illness, addiction, spiritual bankruptcy, as Sister Frances used to say. But Sister Frances was a woman, very interesting woman. She was the daughter of a Massachusetts businessman, kind of a socialite back then, a hippie of the early 1900s. And she had some means, and she was a follower of a woman by the name of Emma Curtis Hopkins, which was Christian mysticism. And she wanted to buy a place and have it so where people could come that needed help from anything. So back in the 1920s, she bought 3 farms, one that I'm currently at and one up and down the road here a bit. One was a place for women and children to go, unwed women, that they could go and be able to be treated with dignity and respect. And the other farm was an elderly farm where people could go and live out their days in a spiritual place. And then this farm that I'm at back then, she called the Come and Go Farm, which was kind of where people would kind of come and go that were suffering from, anything where they needed spiritual healing from. So it tended to attract a lot of alcoholics back then, 1920s, 1930s. It was of the time when if people had tuberculosis and if you brought people up to like the Adirondacks and they breathed in the mountain air, it would cure them. So this property got a reputation back then for, if you can't stop drinking and you go up to this place in Kent, Connecticut, your obsession to drink will be miraculously lifted. So that's what happened. So it attracted a lot of alcoholics. Bill Wilson and Marty Mann and those folks had heard about it from Nona. They came up here in the fall of 1939 on a long weekend in October. They met Sister Frances, who owned the place. Sister Frances fell in love with AA and then attempted to gift it to the Alcoholic Foundation, which is what it was called prior to it being AA. Bill, following the traditions, didn't accept it and said, his exact quote was, we AA can't own property, but we'll use it if you let us. So a bunch of the AA founders went on the High Watch board. Bill was not one of them at first. Years later, when they had some problems, alcoholics fighting, go figure. And they would use it as a place to bring people up to dry out. If you ever heard the term drunk farm, we were the creators of Drunk Farm. So it was High Watch Farm. You'd bring them up Here, they'd bring them up for a weekend, they'd bring them up for a week, they'd bring them up for 2 weeks. They'd live on the farm, they'd participate, they'd be part of a community, and they'd work the steps, So it evolved over the years. We got shut down in the 1980s because we were operating without a license because regulation came in. So we got closed for like a year, opened back up, and everything was fine from then on out. But we modernized over the year. We've built, in the last 6-7 years, a robust clinical program that's kind of been blended well with AA. We still have the same, AA-based program that we've always had. We've just added on a significant, medical and clinical component to it. We have a detox now. We have, outpatient services, sober living, all the different things that a modern day treatment center would have. But we are still rooted in our fundamental principles of Alcoholics Anonymous.
I actually have one of my best friends that I consider a brother is in your care right now. He's been there for a couple months, and he's 41. He's probably been to 25 different treatment programs. Started trying to get sober at 19, 20 years old, and I've had about 3 conversations with him since he's been there, and he is absolutely blown away with what you guys are doing there and the care he's getting. And I had another family friend of mine that admitted there yesterday. So and it's crazy because like I didn't even know High Watch existed until Global Exchange last year. And I've been in the field, been working in the field for about 10 years, and I felt like I was somewhat in the know of different treatment programs around the country, and for some reason, like I knew of Alina Lodge, and I don't know if it's just because of the location, but I've come to know High Watch over the last couple years, or really since last year, since Global Exchange, and I just keep hearing so much good stuff about it, and about the history and the clinical programming and leadership, obviously, and I appreciate what you guys are doing up there, man. Seems like a really special place.
I'd love to have you guys up for a tour.
Yeah.
And when I took over 7 or so years ago, the board had a motto that High Watch was a program of attraction, not promotion.
Yeah.
And the income statement had some red numbers at the bottom.
I can imagine.
We've turned that around, but you can't operate a company in the traditions. But I appreciate the kind words, and
man, it's true.
I came through here myself, so I think that's what makes it special. Also, we're a nonprofit. The board of directors has to be 51% of people active members of Alcoholics Anonymous with a sponsor working a program, like it's in the bylaws.
That's
chairman
cool.
Chairman of the board has to be in recovery, and the CEO has to be in recovery.
Wow. I was reading a little history on it, and I did see something about, Bill Wilson's initial response when he stepped onto the property, and how it, the vibe was thick kind of thing. Is that,
he leaned over to Marty, he said, "My God, Marty, you could cut it with a knife."
Yeah, that's it. Right. Is that, you feel that there? That's very cool.
And, for me, it doesn't wear off. I bring my kids here on the weekends. There's a big alumni Saturday night dinner. And I wouldn't have any of the things that I wouldn't be alive, probably, for sure. But I definitely wouldn't have the good things in my life and the life that I have today if it wasn't for this place.
Mm.
How big is the program? Like, how many residential patients do you have at a time?
So we run full most of the time. We have a bunch of different levels of care on the main campus. We have an operating farm across the street, which is the Hope program, which so 78 residential, 12 detox. So there's 90 like official licensed bed on the main campus. Then we have about 15 PHP beds where people come to the campus for day treatment and then they go off to the houses, and then about 25 IOP beds and sober living. So it's all on we have 3 years here, so it's all on our property here. But the people are in different levels of care. So, at any given time, there's, 130
nice.
or so, 140 people in our care.
Wow. All right.
We also took over Alina Lodge in New Jersey, January.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah.
So that's been good.
That's actually how my buddy got over there. He was an Alina Lodge alum and went back to check a friend in, and ran into Bill. Is his name Bill, the CEO?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ran into Bill, and Bill was like, well, "What are you gonna do?" And he was like, "I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out." And he's like, "No, you're not. You're gonna get a high watch." And it took him over to you guys.
Let's talk global exchange. How did the inception, or tell us about the inception, and how in the hell did you pull that thing off so well? Just FYI, we went and we absolutely were mind blown.
I couldn't believe, when I first saw it, and I was like, all right, he's bringing all these A-listers. This thing's gonna be cool. But then when I got there and I saw how well it was put together logistically,
seamless.
Seamless. And it being the first year of existence, and just it was perfect. Where did the idea come from? Give us the whole rundown. I want to take some time on this, man, because I think everybody needs to experience global exchange. Even people that aren't in our field, to learn about the stuff that's going on there. Give us the whole rundown, man.
You remember in the beginning when you said, "What would people warn us about?"
Yeah. This is it. All right. Well, let her rip, Jer.
Yeah. No, I can tend to be intense, and I'm a details person, and I like to know all the details of how things are going to work and stuff, and I skate the line between involved and micromanaging. But I'm a huge Disney person. Love Disney. Grew up as a kid in a home where we were not afforded the opportunity to go to Disney. We didn't have that kind of money. Like many of us, a bit of a traumatic childhood. So I escaped a lot through Disney movies. And I always thought to myself when I was a kid, if I could ever go, I want to go. And then when I was old enough to go, I went, so I started going as much as I could. Love Disney. My wife likes it, doesn't necessarily love it as much. I have Disney tattoos. That's how much I love it. And we brought the family and the kids, and it's been a wonderful experience for our family. And I was walking around Epcot one day, and I was with one of the kids. If you guys have kids, I was doing the sleeping dad routine where one of them is sleeping, and my wife, was off with the other kids. And I was just kind of walking through Epcot. If you know Epcot, it's a bunch of countries in a circle. Yep. It was the Food and Wine Festival, which has even more countries that pop up. And I was just thinking to myself, man, it's amazing in how if you look at mental health and behavioral health in all these different countries, how it's vastly different. The U.S. is way ahead of many countries on many things, mental health and addiction treatment being one of them. And we're way behind on other things, but we won't get into that. But, I was just, some of the countries that you'd walk through, it's not even discussed, and then, I was just kind of walking around thinking, I'd been to cool places. Sam Quinlan, who was she owned ICAD in London. It was a conference. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Here in London. COVID, to my benefit, unfortunately killed her business because everything shut down, and there wasn't a lot you could do about that. So Sam and I had a relationship from ICAD. So I thought, man, if we could take something similar to what she had done with ICAD and really kind of blow it up bigger, it would be great. And it would be so cool to do it here where all these different places are represented. So I had this great idea that we were going to do this giant, total alcoholic, ego-filled conference. And, in the middle of Epcot, Disney was going to be okay with it. You know what I mean? Disney's going to love it.
Yeah.
So then I called Sam up and I said, Sam, you got to meet me in Disney World. She's like, had never been. And so Sam meets me in Disney World, and I walk her around Epcot and I share with her my idea. I said, I really think we should talk to Disney and we should do, this mental health, addiction, and wellness conference. I said, these are all things that people, because you look at addiction treatment today, right? It's almost like a novelty, oh, we now have a psychiatrist, so when you blend in the addiction, the mental health, and the wellness components, Oh, we have yoga, but like, no, it's never been like meshed that like all these things should be together and kind of treat the whole person and, all as benefits. So, those are where the kind of pillars came in. And then we added leadership because, I firmly believe that there's a real leadership void in our space.
Yep.
I think a lot of people like to go to a lot of conferences and talk about a lot of stuff that they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And myself being one of them. I've only been in this field for 7 years. I'm not going on some speaker circuit. Go talk to Gary Fisher, who like actually knows stuff. But anyway, so Sam loved the idea. We contacted Disney. They didn't hang up on us when we said we wanted to do it in Epcot, but they did laugh a little bit. So we were kind of learn the rules of things that you could do events in these spaces, but you couldn't take over the park. As we kind of evolved, we did it during COVID. We took some, risks at the time because, we knew COVID would eventually blow over, or we hoped it would. We really wanted to focus on like individual people, like, what could we provide to the space that would be useful and helpful? It's the clinicians. Like my care, in treatment, outside of treatment, is only good as the person that I'm sitting there and talking to. And, that evolved into, really putting a message together that we wanted to have people in the industry feel that we were taking care of them for those few days, that we were going to encourage them to begin the idea of thinking differently, of, just because I've always done it this way doesn't mean it's a good idea. I took the sign down because people got offended, but I used to have a sign in my office that said, just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean it's not incredibly fucking stupid. But you can't have that in your office.
I'm going to put one in my office.
Right.
That's a great sign.
It fooled you though, because it looked like an inspirational quote.
Right.
Oh,
It's like, what did that say?
Incredibly fucking stupid. Love it.
And we didn't want to like copy anything anybody did, right? Because I came from a different space, a number of years back, where we had much more evolved conferences that were just in industries that were there for much longer. So kind of my first conference that I went to, it's retired, so I can say it, is Moments of Change in Florida.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I got sober in Del Rey. This shit was ridiculous.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Well, I remember pulling in and I see all these like Ferraris and like Lamborghinis and stuff out front. I'm like, fuck, people better hope the payers don't show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
really.
It was, and I go to get to the water cool. I'll never forget the sign said thirsty for calls. I'm like, this is just
Oh,
wow.
God.
And, in the space I'd have, listen, in some of these conferences, anybody could be an expert speaker. Just pay $20,000.
Yep.
Right.
Get your logo on the brochure.
And where, when Sam and I talked, we weren't going to do things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we have situations like, take Dr. Flowers, for example. Dr. Flowers is an expert in his own right, so Dr. Flowers is speaking at the conference and he happens to be a sponsor. The two arenn't connected. We've had a lot of people that will come to us and say, oh, I'll give you a sponsorship, but we really want our clinical director to be a speaker. So it doesn't work that way, So we wanted people that were going to be speaking at our conference, to be experts in their own right. And we wanted a diverse offering of ideas. My job was not to be the idea police. Sam's job was not to be the idea police. Lizzie, who works with us now, listen, we offer some programs and stuff where like Jerry, as my personal belief system, kind of rolls his eyes a little bit, but that's not my job. You know what I mean? So we wanted to build a program where, we encourage the caregivers, the clinicians, the boots on the ground in these spaces, whether it be a treatment center, a private practice, a hospital, a school system, to be able to come there, challenge themselves to think differently. Because I mean, look, what we're doing is not working. Mental health,
Yeah.
and addiction is through the roof. Overdoses, suicides, I mean, depression, anxiety, this idea that we're going to take a pill to fix everything in the world, is broken, so we want to be able to offer something where we're going to challenge the clinicians and the people to think differently, to do things differently, to try new things, and quite frankly, to lean into their own work. When I feel a different way about myself, that like, I don't want to do something, like, get curious, like, why am I feeling that way? Why don't I want to do that? Why am I uncomfortable? The problem is a lot of people, as soon as they feel uncomfortable, they're out, like, I'm not, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
Saw you guys are doing a self-care workshop too, the first day.
Yeah, so we have a pre-workshop
cool.
that's coming. It's going to be Tion Dayton, Dick Schwartz, Judy Crane. They're going to be doing kind of their own little special thing, presentations in the morning, and then on-sites come in with some group facilitators, and everybody's going to do process groups in the afternoon. And it is just them doing their own work. This you're going to learn some stuff, but Judy Crane says a great thing, and she can say it 'cause she's a clinician and I'm not, but she'll challenge clinicians. She'll say, how dare we ask, a patient of ours to do something that you're not willing to do?
Yep.
So Judy's a big advocate of doing her own work. I've done lots of workshops with Judy, and it's been great. But more importantly with this, so we wanted to build this environment where people felt taken care of. People were challenged to, do things differently, learn new things, have exposure to experts that they wouldn't otherwise have exposure to in, rural Ohio, and try to market to places weren't necessarily marketed for. Our team went around to all 50 states. We got 46 of them. All the licensed professionals within those states, we went and got the lists ourselves. So we went to the health departments and the counties and all that stuff. So we put together a massive marketing list to be able to, share our ideas and what we're doing with this program, across the country. And then we branched out into different places in the world where we have relationships, and are still growing those relationships to be able to pull in more international speakers and have more of an international presence. But ultimately the goal is, this year is looking even better than last year from a program and from a financial perspective. We invested a lot of money last year. This year, hopefully break even. The goal is for year 3 to be able to post a bit of a profit here, but we're never going to profit. We're a nonprofit. And the goal is to just be able to provide scholarships for the conference to, socioeconomic areas that otherwise wouldn't be able to have access to these presenters. Like, if you've got, a good amount of money, you can go see these experts. But if you're, working in a Medicaid program in the middle of Pennsylvania, they're probably not going to, pay your $1,000 registration to go to this thing. So, the big goal for us, going into potentially this year, depending on what the numbers look like the next month or two, and then definitely going into next year as we grow, is to be able to provide educational opportunities for underprivileged, underserved areas that otherwise wouldn't have access to this type of education.
Yeah, that would be awesome. What's your vision look like in terms of numbers? Like, year 5, do you want 20,000 people showing up for Global Exchange? Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm an alcoholic, so the bigger is
go
better,
bigger, go
right?
home.
Yeah,
hell yeah.
yeah, bigger is better. So we had 2,500 or so registered last year. We're about 22% as of today ahead of where we were, on pace.
Good.
You monitor it week by week. So if that paces, we'll have a little over 3,000.
Awesome.
So we'd ultimately like to grow it to 10,000 is our goal.
Nice.
Wow. It just, what stands out in my mind is the innovation aspect and so many things you just said in that description where, as a society, as a country, and even, globally, we're struggling mentally, we're struggling with addiction, we're struggling with all these things, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. In fact, it seems to be getting worse. But what I love about the conference is that it does incorporate the wellness aspect to it. And that was what caught my eye. Like plenty of conferences out there are mental health, addiction, but when you throw wellness in there, then you got the whole system. And when we talked to many people about the whole going upstream strategy. And I feel like, you know, we can attack the symptoms all day long, but we've got to go for the cause, and we got to figure out what is creating all this increase in the mental health suffering that we're experiencing. And so your conference, I mean, incorporating the whole system and including all of this innovation and people from all around thinking outside of the box and cutting edge, it's just freaking awesome. So nice work, brother.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll never forget when I was in treatment, there was a guy that was the director of nursing here at the time, this fellow by the name of Ray, and he was in recovery. He was a nurse. And I was here like day 3, and I go down to nursing, and I said, listen, I can't, I'm going to jump out of my own skin. Like I'm just so anxious. I can't stand it. And he's like, well, have you ever tried, like deep breathing exercises? I'm like, this freaking quack. You know, like
give me some more methadone, bro.
Yeah, like I need a pill. Like I don't need you to talk me about breath work. And he says, listen, like I'm not going to give you clonidine or Visceral. Like I'm not going to give you anything right now. I want you to, and he gives me headphones and a CD. It was back when the you know, it was like CD players with what were those, whatever the hell they were called.
Discman.
Discman. Yeah. He gives me a Discman, and he says, I want you to go back to your dorm, and I want you to do this CD. And I don't know what the hell came over me, man, but I just listened to him. You know what I mean? I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back to my dorm and do this bullshit. I go back and I listened to it. It changed everything for me. Like just and it wasn't like that thing, because my anxiety persisted and I had post-acute withdrawal symptoms, but like it got better. But it was the willingness to take a suggestion, and then I felt better from it, you know? And that's simple stuff. Like we forget that, like with the clinicians and the staff at like these centers and the private practice, and like, you know, like we can get stuck in our own routines of how doing things, you know, like right now, psychedelics are the new cure for everything, right? You take some psychedelics, you're going to cure all your trauma, and that's going to be the end of it. Listen, I think ketamine and psychedelics and stuff like definitely have a place for certain people. Like I'm sure it's extremely helpful. But like, there's nothing out there, nothing right now that's the fix for everyone. You know, AA might work great for some people. It might not work well for others. Smart recovery might be great. Group therapy, you know, ketamine infusions, microdosing, like whatever it is. So, you know, we want to be able to offer a palette of like, here's everything that we can offer, you know, and you know, people learn differently. You know, I'm the type of person where like in school, if I had a good teacher and I heard somebody, you know, the professor talk about things in school, like I remembered it. Lead me to read a book, I'm not the guy. I think people heal that way. You know, I see people here that some people, you know, do the best in art therapy. Some people do best in psychodrama. Some people love IFS and parts work. You know, and some people don't want any of that and just need the fellowship of AA. You know, where all of a sudden, like that's the shift for them. So like, we want to be able to offer as many things as we can to people without judgment, without this isn't going to work. I mean, and there's so many experts ask any of these experts, like their way is the way that's going to fix all of it, you know? And Bessel, if you guys are familiar with Bessel. This is one of the reasons I love Bessel, because you know, one of the things when I first met him, he said to me, Jer, clinicians, practitioners need to like stop having religion for certain modalities. You know, like his belief is the same thing. Like, you know, like he's big into neurofeedback. You know, neurofeedback isn't for everybody, you know? So he's going to be at the conference this year. You know, he's a big advocate, and he pisses off some of his colleagues because he says like, none of you have all of it for everyone, you know, like, so, you know, that was one of the reasons that we've brought in this diverse people, you know, because I've had people call me up and say, what the hell is this person doing on psychedelics? Like, I'm not the gatekeeper.
Yeah. Bring them all. Let's figure it out together.
You can have 3 sips of a glass of wine and put it down. Like, I don't know. She's not a healthy person. Maybe some mushrooms would do her some good. I have no idea.
You know, what stands out is the story you told about yourself. It's where you decided that I'm just going to do what they're suggesting. And so that's kind of the key. It's, we're constantly looking for the external, what's right for me, and that's not, and this is, and maybe that is. It's an inside job, without getting too memey.
Yeah.
It's an inside job. You got to be ready.
We got to have autonomy.
Family member calls up and they're yelling, "This is the 24th time they've been to treatment. What's going to be different?" I don't know.
Yeah.
We can't,
we'll see.
We've been writing prescriptions for willingness for years,
Right.
whether or not somebody wants to fill it.
Yeah, but like you said, man, the more stuff we got on the table, the higher the probability is that something's going to take.
Motivate that inside job, right?
And we've had people that, that have been to, 20 treatment centers, and all of a sudden they get with like Danny, our art therapist, and there's a shit.
Click.
Yeah. Now that's not everybody. I mean, that's not my thing. But for me, you get Tion Dayton in front of me doing psychodrama, and she's
freaking awesome. Where do you see the field going, man? I mean, we kind of talked about what we think it needs, but like, where do you got hope for us as a collective in terms of mental health and addiction and overall wellness? Like, what do you think needs to shift within our field to really make an impact on the suffering of our society and our culture right now? Where do you think the biggest, opportunity lies?
This particular field, listen, I listen to people at these conferences that are experts and talk about stuff, and they talk about it's never been so bad, the field's awful, it's a cesspool. It's not been my experience.
Yeah, me neither.
I have met the most loving, interesting, caring, mission-driven people in my entire life, and it's because a lot of shared experiences, right? You'll have an academic, expert who might say, oh, well, they're not qualified because they're not a clinician, or, you wouldn't go ask your cancer doctor, if they were a cancer survivor, and, or go ask a cancer survivor what dose of radiation you should be taking. Like, this is a unique disease. This is a unique field. This is a unique suffering. This isn't, a hip replacement or a measurable, medical condition. Behavioral health is much more unique. So in this particular field, in this particular space, I think it attracts folks who've got shared experiences. I think, many studies and statistics show that whether it be a 12-step program or group therapy, that the fellowship and the sharing of shared experiences has a tremendously positive therapeutic impact on people. So, when you get to the field as a whole, like, I think the field is in much better shape than the regular healthcare system. You go to hospitals nowadays.
Yep.
They're in complete shambles. The receptionist at the desk is burnout. They don't want to talk to. That's not been my experience when I walk into treatment centers across the country. That's not been my experience when I talk to clinicians around the country, or, mental health specialists. Like, I find these people to be the best people in the world. The people that are in this for the right reasons. I think the field probably needs to be cleaned up a bit from, a marketing perspective, but that's everywhere. You know how many unethical urgent care centers are around the country? Nobody wants to talk about that, or orthopedics who own radiology centers. Like, they're just an MD. Right. So it's acceptable. You know what I mean? Like, that's not to say, but that's not the majority of this country. The majority of the country is, ethical, good people who are doing things for the right reasons, that want to help people, that, are going to try the best that they can with what they have, and I feel lucky to be in my position. I feel lucky to have met and worked with the people that I've met and worked with. And, I'm incredibly hopeful for the field. It's a very progressive, willing group of people.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. All you hear about is the negative shit. That's the problem. And like you said, there's so much positive. There are a lot of lives being saved out there, and we hear about the ones that aren't.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, treatment doesn't work."
Yeah, bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Right.
It worked for me. I see it working here every day, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we tend to focus on the bad outcomes. And we call, insurance companies calls them negative outcomes and stuff. It's like we feel it here different. Like when we lose somebody here, like they were part of our family. You know what I mean? Like they were, for as long as I'm not traveling, I know every single person on campus, who the clinician is, like we take this, very, very, very seriously. And treatment does work. Is it going to work right now? I don't know.
Yeah,
Dick
well, let's
is
give
the
it a
only
shot.
disease I know that talks to you in your own voice.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that I'm kind of obsessed with and always have been is like the engagement issue. And, we know that 10% of the people that have a diagnosable substance use disorder are going to get help, and 90% aren't or haven't statistically over the course of time. Where do you think we need to go, or how do you think we need to start talking about this? And I think you talked about it, and you've done a great job with it at Global Exchange in terms of adding that wellness component and looking at things a little bit more holistically to try to pull that 90% in, or really engage with that population and make it easier for people to ask for help when they need it. Where do you think we need to go in regards to that?
So I think a lot of time we take a backseat kind of like a teaching like relationship to things rather than an engagement
Yep.
as you kind of said. For example, it's only taken me 12 years or 11 years for this, but like if you ask any holistically leaning somewhat physician or psychiatrist, what's the best thing somebody could do who's got an anxiety disorder, sleep disruptions? Exercise. So fine, sit in a room, we'll put a PowerPoint up that says like, well, we've decreased by 37% if you exercise. I didn't want to exercise. I'll show you some pictures. Like I didn't want to exercise for years, but now I'm to the point where like I took a suggestion, I started doing it, like, and now if I don't exercise, I can, because I'm in my body, I'm not numbed by anything, I can feel the difference. So the reason I say this is because like somebody took the time to get a little more interactive with me and have discussions. And I think from a society's perspective, we need to design systems from being, schools and up that promote healthy things, like, I mean, Michelle Obama took a crack at it. You'll even look at the food my kids get in public school. Like
Poison.
It's not food.
Good, and I'm in my body now and pay attention to things. And just recently in the last few years, to be honest with you, like when I eat some sugar, I pay attention to how I feel. I don't feel good. I like it, but like I don't feel good. So I think from a much younger age, we need to start with like better nutrition, better communication skills. I grew up in a house in a community where boys don't cry. All the stereotypical stuff that's just not healthy. So I think it starts way back to what you had said before about we got to stop it from happening in the first place. I go back. I had you don't need to share my story with you here, but I grew up in a traumatic household, right? And I had some bad stuff happen to me as a kid. And as a professional now, when I look back and you look at my grades in school, you look at my behaviors in school, you look at the friends I hung out with, you look at the substance use that came up, all the signs were there. All the signs were there
predictable
for somebody to pull me aside and say, what happened? What's going on? So, from a public school perspective of getting, more like really trained mental health people in. Listen, I love social workers. Social workers, help save my life from a therapy perspective. But ask a social worker how much training they get in school when it comes to like mental illness disorders or addiction. It's not a lot. So, to try to get some of these people more diversified trainings and get the right people into the right places in, public school systems, police departments with deferral programs, so that we're not taking all these people and locking them up in jail. I mean, if I had the freaking correction department's budget, like, to treat mental health and addiction, but the good news is we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, we
These
are.
things are happening in states. Like, I'm not lamenting that, like, oh, nobody's listening. Like, people are listening. There's funding coming through for things. There's states that are doing innovative stuff that we kind of have to see how they go, and people will copy them. Like, things are moving in the right direction. But having said that, it's still not enough. I mean, the cure for the opioid epidemic is going to be MAT, right? Put everybody on medication-assisted treatment, and that's going to cure it all. Well, never in the history of the world has more prescriptions been written for MAT, and never in the history of the world have there been more overdoses. So, I'm not a scientist, but like, if you look at like what we're doing to correct the problem, it's not even curved it. So back to what you said before, which is the real problem, is we're not addressing the root cause of mental health and addiction. Listen, MAT saves people's lives. It gives people an opportunity to be around longer, to be able to, but we're still not addressing the issue.
Bit of a Band-Aid.
What happened to you as a kid? Because that's the root cause of most of this. Like, what happened that we ended up here? Nobody ever asked me that until I was here.
We got to figure out what that is, and then figure out how to put systems in place to stop that shit from happening.
And it's not just there's going to be a little of this.
Yeah.
People here in treatment all the time that for the first time ever, they're going to share with their clinician. You want to know what? I was sexually abused as a kid. And then they don't want to talk about it anymore. So the door was open. Then maybe they come back a year or two later and they finish the conversation, but we need to provide people spaces to be able to process and to be able to heal from those things.
Yeah. Man, well, we could do this for hours, but in the spirit of time, let's do a little shift, because I have this just one question that I typically ask a lot of our guests, but I would love to ask you, and it's more of a societal kind of thing, because our podcast is very heavily, or traditionally, or in the beginning has been heavily in the alcohol space, but we look at it through a wellness lens. So we tend to talk a lot about alcohol because of its just public normalcy and it being such a heavy part of our culture. But there is a shift. There's a huge alcohol-free world opening up, and this trend is occurring. I
just got back from Burning Man last week.
Yeah, I'm glad that you escaped.
Yeah,
and I was kind of following your journey on Facebook.
A sober camp, total, substance-free sober camp with
That's cool.
Other people. It was awesome.
Glad you made it out alive.
Yeah. But so it's kind of a two-part question, because I do want to incorporate marijuana in this question, because it's becoming so legal, and eventually it is going to be legal, and we know, working in this field, how dangerous it is and can be. Meanwhile, the alcohol trend is going in this direction. The marijuana trend is going in this direction. What are we doing? One of our friends said we're just switching seats on the Titanic. I mean, is that kind of, how do you think about that?
So whether it's alcohol or marijuana or, benzos or opiates, whatever it is, it's all the same thing. You're just escaping, you're just numbing out from whatever it is that's going on. Having said that, there's plenty of people in this world, I'm not one of them, that drink responsibly. There's plenty of people in this world that can use marijuana responsibly. I am also not one of them. So I don't like getting caught up in, the whether it's legal, whether it's not legal, whether it's good, whether it's bad. People ask, I'm sure you guys all the time, like, hey, do you think so-and-so is an alcoholic, or do you think I have a pop problem? Like, I can't answer that question. Like, it depends upon the motives of somebody.
He's lying in the front yard right now. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. And I tell people the same thing. The fact that you're asking me this question, you should get curious about why you asked me the question. But the sad part is, listen, man, life's great. Like, I got 3 beautiful kids. I got a wife that I love. I've got a job that, like, I can't believe they pay me to come here. And and how sad it would be if I was numbed out for it and couldn't remember things and, was checking out from it. But I think society has never been more numbed than it is right now with substances. And listen, I'll quote her again. Judy Crane said to me 7 years ago when I first met her and she was talking about herself, and she said, we're the lucky ones because we got an escape from drugs and alcohol that prevented us from killing ourselves.
Yep.
And that hit home with me. That was it. So, substances might have a place for some people from a recreational perspective. It might have a place for some people from a coping perspective. But, at the end of the day, I want everybody to be happy, joyous, and free, right? So, I think that we need to create spaces and have conversations with people that allow them to, explore things like that. I think that, I've always been comfortable talking about my recovery and my situation. Not everybody still is. I know some people that can't share it at work because of the profession that they're in and they're going to be judged differently. But everybody talks about how drunk they got on Friday night.
Right.
So, I'm not sure if I really answered your question, but, I think that, listen, marijuana is not going away. I think they should, and some of the same psychiatric experts from a couple years ago that I personally know said, oh yeah, we should legalize it. It's good for, anxiety disorders and whatnot, which might have a place for some people with things like that, are now saying to me, I've never had so many people come into me with psychosis,
Yeah.
It's not the same pot that I smoked 10 or 15 years ago. Or well, not
from
10,
it.
15 years ago. It's super, super potent. We have people that come into treatment all the time where their early 20s, they've been using, they have, cannabis use disorder. They've predominantly using that. And then, we take them off of it and we monitor them for a few days, just kind of cringing, waiting for them to pop. And a lot of times, they enter, into a psychotic phase that they don't necessarily come back from. Now, the question becomes, was it the chicken or the egg? Were they treating, were they self-medicating an undiagnosed psychiatric disorder? Or did it take somebody who was maybe predisposed a bit for, schizophrenia and then flipped a switch that can't be unflipped?
Yep.
And there's a lot of, psychiatrists that I know that work with that say the latter, that said,
scary as shit.
This high potency THC is taking people who otherwise might not have been, schizophrenic and, push them into a category that they're not coming back from.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, back in our day, ripping too big of a bong hit was was when you freaked out for a little bit. Now you can eat, accidentally eat 100 milligrams of a gummy and then you're gone.
I think you're gonna die. Yeah.
Oh God, it's a little scary. You want to ask the
man? So give us the three biggest benefits for you for removing substances from your life.
The three biggest benefits for removing substances in my life.
3 out of the 100.
Yeah.
3 out of so it improved my relationship with myself. It forced me to be present in myself. It gave me it kind of forced me into an exploration of actually exploring my emotions and my feelings and why I feel that way. It gave me my family. I wouldn't have, every time I talk about my kids, I get, I wouldn't have my kids,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have my kids. I can remember everything. I didn't remember it. I mean, it was pre-2010. Things are fuzzy.
Awesome, man. That I can feel it.
Yeah, me too, man.
That feels good, Jerry. All right, final question. Jerry Schwab, why do you care so much?
I don't really give a shit.
Best one yet.
We're gonna edit everything else out after that, just so you know.
Because somebody gave a shit about me.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, after I was, you know, healthy enough, you know, enough years later, you know, I wanted to be able to help somebody else.
All right.
Hell yeah, man. Well, thanks for spending the time with us today, and thanks for everything you're doing, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. We love you.
Take care.
The information and opinions shared on this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and are not a substitute for medical advice. If you feel like you may need professional help, here are some resources. Visit Patrick Balsley's practice, sanacounseling.com, Robbie Shaw's practice, eventiderecovery.com, or visit theblanchardinstitute.com.